So, not sure how this is gonna go. I thought I would try to record on driving. It's always a great idea. Anyway, so sorry if the sound is a little bad. I'm not even sure why I'd record necessarily. I had just some thoughts going through my head, and so sorry, this car in front of me says his asshole on a bumper sticker. I don't know what that means, that it's his asshole. That was very distracting. I don't know what it means, but I like it. So anyways, what I was thinking though, to get back to that I was just thinking about the necessity of free will, I guess, in God being love. Like, if God is love, or if get rid of the word God, if the creation, if what creates life and what sustains life is something like love, like we know as what we would describe as love, in order for that to create, like in order for love to exist, I would think it would need something to love, or it would at least want or desire something to love, something to pour itself into, which would mean it would need to create. But if there's only one thing that exists, so say there's just God or just love that exists, and it's just one thing, it's just one point, well, it needs to create. And then in order to love something, it needs to love something other than itself. Otherwise it's just kind of consuming itself and gnawing away at itself, and selfish. So it creates something, and then that thing would have to be separate from it. So it would have to have its own free will in order to have its own identity. At least to some extent. I mean, there is a way that we don't have free will, and that you can't turn yourself into, a bird and fly away. Like, you're constrained somewhat by the laws of nature, but that is created and split out from the one. So like in creation, it splits apart, and the one becomes two, or the two becomes three, or it just keeps, there's just this multiplicity, and things keep multiplying, and then they all have their own separate identities. So it just keeps breaking apart and keeps multiplying into all these millions and trillions and gazillions or whatever, all these infinite number of things. But what holds them all together has to be this self-sacrificial love, and this or love in some sense. Like, two things would come together under a third thing, whatever purpose that may be. And it could be you could say purpose. I'm still kind of exploring the idea, because I kept saying love to my cousin last night, and I was saying, my cousin Lily, we were talking about this, and I kept saying that love is what holds all things together. Like, it has to be love. Like, you have to love something, even if it's a lesser love. Like, two people could come together just for pleasure or wanting sex or something like that, but they're still coming together for some sort of love, even if it's just the love of fulfilling their lust. Like, there's just this attention or care, direction of love that's going towards a certain aim. And so that's what's unifying the two and bringing them together. And so that love may be little, and it may break apart after they're done banging or whatever, then they go their separate ways. But what brought them together was something like a very low base form of love. But I kept saying it was love, but you could say purpose. And anyway, so ultimately I would think I'm getting a little sidetracked, but ultimately love creates, and then it unifies at the same time. And so God is creating, and all things are coming from God, but they're all being drawn back to Him through forgiveness. Because as soon as you give it free will, then it has the ability to create its own identity, which would be something like sin, because it's a misplaced identity. It's a missing the mark. It's missing the aim. It's missing the image of God. But then that separate identity is brought back into communion with the one identity through forgiveness. And it's through that communion of forgiveness and love and mercy that it is continually transformed more and more like the Creator. And I think the Creator is continually ever growing off of that ever expanding mercy. Because if God is something like love and mercy and hesed, the Hebrew word for mercy is like loving kindnesses, and those loving kindnesses are continually and ever expanding. God is continually growing through creating, because He gets to love more, and He gets to love more the more we have separate identities that are still being brought into the one identity. It's kind of weird, and it feels a little bit paradoxical, but it's like His mercy endures forever. It's like this infinity symbol, or this circle that's just growing and growing and growing and continue. That's how I see it, at least, and that might not be helpful to anybody. But anyways, so that's that, and things can be brought in. To get back to that idea, though, things being brought into under purpose and not necessarily a thing like love. I'm still thinking about that, because I was thinking about there are purposes that are just seem to have the purpose of destroying, which would be something like vengeance or revenge. Like, your purpose is to destroy. But then I was thinking about it further, and I was like, that's still something like love, because you're destroying, you might be destroying something, but what's holding you together, your identity, is vengeance now. Like, that's your name, that's your aim, that's what's holding you together. So you have now come into unity. Like, what's holding your being together is something like that vengeance. And once that vengeance is complete, then your purpose is complete, then you're done. Like, you need to find another identity or another thing. But I still think that's something like love, because it seems like it would be the love of vengeance is why you would find your reason for existence, or your reason for being. So I'm still playing with that idea. I still need to think of more purposes and more names, more identities that one can strive after. That would be lesser, but it still seems to, for some reason in my mind, it's still something like love or attention or care that you're drawn towards, that's holding you together, holding together the multiplicity of your being and your existence. Anyways, that's all.